Good morning. How y'all doing, everybody? We're gonna start off with our anchor song for January. So, do you have your teal hymnals with you? If you don't, they're in that rack at the back. Get yourself a nice blue one.
Or the words are very, very simple, and if you just listen this week, by the end of January, you'll know them
Absolutely.
easily.
By the time you learn it, it'll be time to learn a new one.
That's not true. They're very simple.
So it's number 1011, Return Again. And we're just gonna sing it straight through.
With the repeats.
With the repeats.
That means when you get to the double lines with the dots on them, you go back and you sing that part again. And then you sing the next part until you get to the end.
Thank you.
And then you go back.
And it goes something like this. Would you please stand in eyes and body and spirit as you're able? Give me an F there. Here we go. I'll stand here. Do it again. Here we go. Return again. Return again. Return to the home of your soul. Return again. Return again. Return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are, born and reborn. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lakeland. My name is Petra. I use the pronouns she and her. I want to thank you all for being here on this glorious New Year's Day. I had to feel festive, so I decided to dress festive. Yes, it's so good to be together. Are we on Zoom?
Yes?
Very good. So
Thumbs up.
thumbs up for Zoom. I appreciate everyone being here, no matter how you came. And you belong here. Whatever your gender identity, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, abilities, or theological beliefs. Unitarian Universalism is a loving and affirming faith in which we learn, grow, and co-create the sacred as a community. If you're new here, please know that we would love to get to know you, so join us after the service in the social hall or say hello on the online chat feature if you're in Zoom. Our newsletter is published every Wednesday, and it is the main source of information for you, UCL. Be sure to sign up and read all about this happening community. Printed copies are available if you need them, and there is one posted on in the hallway on the bulletin board. I would like to lift up a few of the items from the newsletter that serve our mission statement plus of love plus connection equals transformation. This is the season for increased virus activity. It's still kind of cool outside, and it would have to get really, really hot before that would have anything to do with the virus. They are expecting another possible rise in COVID, so we ask that you use your own common sense and discretion at the wearing of a mask for your protection and the protection of those around you. We've got everybody quite socially distanced here, so we're all good. Thursday is the day of our regularly scheduled worship committee. This Thursday, we will be meeting at 5 p.m. on Zoom. Please join us as we enter into this glorious new year of possibility. The link will be available in the newsletter. On Wednesday, we have our small gatherings here, and normally we would have one this coming Wednesday on January 3rd, but we will not have that this week. Next week, we'll have our usual dinner worship, which is what happens on our second Wednesday of the month. This Friday is January 6th, and we participate in the first Friday in downtown Lakeland. We need volunteers for the UUCL tent that we set up, so please contact Amber Bridges if you are interested. We have a book fair that will be going on January 14th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'll have titles from the Skinner House Publishing and Beacon Press. It's a great opportunity to get your hands on new reading material from our UU publishers and to help UUCL raise money. Contact Gail Rushford for more information about that. On January 21st, for those of you who like to walk, we will be participating in the Martin Luther King Parade. I believe it starts at 1 o'clock, but more information can be found out on the bulletin board as well. If you're new to UUCL and or are interested in becoming more engaged, we'll begin a small group for newcomers wanting to know more, or for those interested in membership. The program's called Starting Point, an introduction to the Unitarian Universalist journey. A small group is a very meaningful way to get to know others and create more meaning. We want you to continue your faith journey with us, so please consider joining this group. We will start the 4-week program next Sunday, January the 8th. Vaisel Decour will lead the group, and a new member ceremony for those who wish to become members of our UUCL congregation will be held in February. You can email our spiritual life director, Heather Norby, if you are interested in doing that. This month, we will be journeying on a path of finding our center. But what does that mean? What is our center? How do we even know? A friend of ours once said, "That's easy. Just find your belly button and go in about 3 inches." Makes sense. However, we are finding a more spiritual center this month, one that is not seen but can easily be felt. Let's take some time right now and take a deep breath in. And breathe out. Envision the center of yourself. How do your spiritual and theological beliefs inform you about what is at your center? Do you call it God? The still, small voice within? Intuition, perhaps. Or maybe something else entirely. Doesn't matter. Maybe you don't know what to call it. That's okay. Let go of any stress around not knowing and know that you are in a safe space right now where we can discover new things about ourselves and what it might mean to find our center. Our opening words today are "Before the World Told Us Who It Wanted Us to Be" by Reverend Scott Taylor. May we light now and kindle the time we now share. Anchor us to that inner flame, that sacred center, which helps us remember who we were before the world told us who it wanted us to be. May our time together clear away for those memories and voices and friends that lead us back home. In the tradition of our Unitarian Universalist faith, we will light our chalice now. I want everyone to please rise in body and or spirit to join us in singing and signing Spirit of Life while Judy Pell lights our chalice for us. was a test. Well, it sounded beautiful. On this human journey, we encounter a complexity of joys and sorrows. We weave these joys and sorrows into the fabric of our being when we acknowledge them and pay attention to what they have to tell us. Small voice that sits in the center of our being. We come here each week and we engage in this sorrows as a way to remember to continue to listen to this voice at the center of our being. We do. The stones are there. Drop the ones in it that call to you. If you're on Zoom, we will say your name and drop a pebble for you, so we all know that we are together and connected. thank you very much, Gabby. It's really wonderful to have a variation of music here for us today, and it was nice of Gabby to agree to volunteer her time to play. All right. We were instructed in the newsletter to bring pencil and paper to this service. There will not be a test, and we're not going to make a long list of New Year's resolutions or anything, it's not stressful. If you would like, you may come and get paper if you didn't bring any. You don't have to. If you have paper, I saw some people with their pads and pencils. You can take them out and prepare to see what we have for you. All right. Adam will pass among you. If you want, just raise your hand. You don't even have to come up. Traditionally, this is a day for starting fresh, making resolutions, creating goals, and formulating new hopes for one's future. But how successful are we ever at such things? I can't say that I've been particularly successful at keeping my resolutions, and I know a lot of people who are right there along with me. Perhaps we set our expectations too high. Is it that breaking out of old patterns is difficult and we're not really setting a new path for ourselves? Or do we just get caught up in the busyness of life as the new year gets going and forget that we even made promises to ourselves to begin with? The world keeps us busy. It's hard to break free from the patterns of behavior that are pressed upon us by the American culture. Hard, but not impossible. Perhaps we need just a different approach and a way in which we can become aware of what parts of the patterns of our lives need to shift so that we create a new and enlivened patterns for ourselves. As it turns out, doctors and other researchers, here's the science, have been working on new approaches to something we will all probably need a better pattern for: rest. Rest. Not just sleep, but a kind of rest that puts us back in touch with ourselves. A rest that helps us find our center so that we can actually have the energy to be impactful in the world and keep ourselves healthy. In one TED Talk, we've all seen TED Talks, they're lots of fun, Dr. Sondra Dalton-Smith says, "We go through life thinking we've rested because we've gotten enough sleep. But in reality, we're missing out on the other types of rest we desperately need. The result is a culture of high-achieving, high-producing, chronically tired, and chronically burned out individuals. We're suffering from a rest deficit because we don't understand the true power of rest." In another TED Talk, Australian researcher Beck Heinrich asks, when was the last time you woke up in the morning, went into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and thought to yourself, "Wow, I feel fresh, motivated, inspired, and rested"? Her research shows that not many people do. Rest, as Heinrich explains, has become a counter-cultural movement. The world keeps calling us to more, 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 and people are forgetting to factor rest into their schedules. Or perhaps we just don't even know how to anymore. I think I've got that problem. People are overcommitted, and our workplace cultures don't value rest. Human beings have become human doings, and we've lost touch with our sacred centers, Call it God, the still small voice, our intuition, or whatever suits you. But I think it shows in the ways we treat one another and the earth. We forgot how to rest, and we've forgotten ourselves in the process. We need a rest revolution, because only when we stop and look at ourselves can we restore our whole selves. When we rest, we have to examine our hearts. When we rest, we make room once again for those big questions about life. Who am I? What am I doing here? What do I want to be doing here? We can find clarity and truth in rest. We can find the center of our identities when we rest. We discover what we're grateful to have in our lives and what we can do without when we rest. Only rest can refuel our depleted energy reserves so that we can enter back into the world with a renewed sense of purpose and meaning. Today, we will examine the 7 kinds of rest that Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith says we need in order to restore our whole selves. As we go through these different kinds of rest, this is where your paper and pencil comes in. You will have the opportunity to write down how you might know if you need a certain kind of rest, how you can begin to do little things to change your daily patterns so that you get those kinds of rest. So, we all ready for our writing? If you choose, some of us have photographic memory. We don't have to write things down. Let us begin. The first type of rest we need is physical rest. How do we know we need physical rest? Are you experiencing an elevated heart rate? Your body aches, or your muscles are sore or cramping? You feel tired and moody? You feel fatigued or sick? Do you ever experience any of these? Might be something you want to think about. That physical rest could help. Think about it for a minute and jot down the times you remember that you have felt like this. These are the times that you probably need physical rest. There are 2 kinds of physical rest, passive or active. Passive physical rest includes sleeping and napping, while active physical rest means restorative activities such as yoga, stretching, and massage therapy that help improve the body's circulation and flexibility. Think about how you can give yourself physical rest. What are the things that would call to you most to help you have physical rest in the times that you need it? Maybe write down some of those ideas. And maybe you can think of other ones that I did not mention that would, perhaps especially the restorative activities such as yoga, stretching, and massage. Might be some other things that you know help refresh, restore, refuel you physically. I'm seeing all kinds of heads down and people are writing. It's wonderful. The second type of rest is mental rest. Do you feel stressed out? Do you get irritable and forgetful? Have a difficult time concentrating on your work? Do small things seem overwhelming when you lie down to sleep at night? Do you frequently struggle to turn off your brain? Despite sleeping 7 to 8 hours, do you wake up feeling as if you never went to bed? Take a moment to think about any of these things that might have happened to you, when they happened. Maybe jot that down. And thinking about when they happened could also be a good signal for you, because you might want to look at, oh, I felt that way when I did this. Maybe you would like to not do that anymore or alter it in some way. Okay. The good news is you don't have to make any drastic changes, like quitting your job, even if you want to, or taking a long vacation. We all want that, I think. What you can do is schedule short breaks to occur every 2 hours throughout your day. These breaks can remind you to slow down. During these breaks, you can just get up, move around, even dance or play ping pong or some other kind of game, something you enjoy. Or perhaps you might sit and people watch. Get yourself outside of your own head where all that mental activity is going on. Just get out of there. Try to think about what's going on with others. Even though you won't know the truth about what's going on with others, stepping outside of your own thoughts can bring you new insights to you. My sons and I used to sit in the mall and make up stories about people we saw. I'm sure none of it was true, but it was lots of fun. During a short mental break, you can take a few minutes to go outside, meditate, or perhaps pay attention to an animal. Play a game, a short game or puzzle of some sort. So let's take a minute also to write down how often you personally might want to take a mental break throughout the day. List a few things that you could easily do to get some mental rest. Get yourself out of your head. See if you can slow down any of those worrisome, bothersome thoughts. I know some of you are very fast at writing, but I want to give as many heads that are down as much time as possible. Dr. Dalton Smith says that the third type of rest we need is sensory rest. We are inundated with noise every day, all the time. It's not just auditory noise, but anything that can overwhelm our senses. Bright lights, computer screens, phone notifications, background noise, multiple conversations, Zoom calls, a never-ending to-do list. even overwhelming smells or processed foods with artificial flavors. That was an interesting one for me to hear. All these can cause our senses to feel overwhelmed because all of those, I mean, we have to think of not just our ears, our eyes, our nose, all of them, all of our senses. They can cause us to feel overwhelmed and irritable and jumpy, not wanting to be touched or to enjoy a concert or a movie or anything that would otherwise be enjoyable. Do loud noises make you flinch or wince or have some sort of adverse reaction? Perhaps you experience eye fatigue or strain. Take notes if you can think of some time when you have felt a sensory overload. You could jot that down now, but strive to be more aware when you are having these, when you suddenly realize that smell is just overwhelming me, or naturally sounds, any kind of sounds or computers, any of those things, just become more aware perhaps. So many people are writing, it's very encouraging. Now, what should you do when you need sensory rest? Don't reach for your phone or flip on the TV. I mean, that's what's causing it in the first place. These things overwhelm your senses more instead of less. Total sensory deprivation is impossible. But we can get rid of one sensory input here or there in order to find some rest for our senses. Do something simple like closing your eyes, turning off or walking away from the noise. If you plan intentional moments to do this, then you might not find yourself in moments where overload is inescapable. Take a moment now to write down some ideas for when you think you heard how the ways that you could possibly rest your senses. There actually are heads in here that have not come up since I started, so believe it or not. The fourth type of rest is creative rest. Do you ever feel like you just can't come up with new ideas or solve new problems? Do you feel like you lost your creative juices and don't know how to get started on that next project? You may be in need of creative rest if you're constantly producing and don't get a break. Write down some times when you feel a huge lack of creativity and think you might need a rest. Just a side note, I want to remind everyone that the Orthodox celebrate Christmas around January 6th, January 7th. So we are honoring the Orthodox by leaving our Christmas trees up this week. Also, my creativity sensories needed some rest. What can you do? Take a break and look outside. Go for a walk. Turn your workspace into a place of inspiration by displaying images of places and love and works of art that speak to you. Take a break from one project and work on something totally different. So what if you have a deadline? You'll probably accomplish that deadline quicker if you don't force yourself to stay and work on a project that has kind of burned you out now. Try something else. You can also sleep. That's another way that takes you away from all of that, to restore your juices. So if you want, you can take another moment to write down some ways that you can take a creative rest to restore your own creative juices. Something that calls to you as to how to get those creative juices flowing again so that you can accomplish all that you want. Okay, that was number 4. We're getting there. Are you a people pleaser? Do you have a hard time saying no? Do you feel taken advantage of and unappreciated? Examine your feelings like this for just a few moments and take some notes, if this applies to you. If you discovered you struggle with saying no, and you're feeling a bit depleted, you probably need emotional rest. This is the rest that comes from saying yes too many times. You need to say no. It means you need the time to freely express your feelings and cut back on people-pleasing. It means you need to reinforce your boundaries around what is good for you. Emotional rest also requires the courage to be authentic. An emotionally rested person can answer the question, "How are you today?" with a truthful, "I'm not okay." And then go on to share some hard things that otherwise go unsaid. Perhaps you could take just a few moments to write down some of the things you wish you had said no to, or that you will say no to in the future, so that you can get some emotional rest. Some boundaries that you've overlooked, perhaps. Sometimes we need social rest. Are there relationships in your life that drain you? Think about that now. Perhaps write down perhaps some relationships that could go differently or be removed from your life. To experience more social rest, surround yourself with positive and supportive people. Maybe you can think of some of those people that you want to be around more to help support you and give you positive feedback and time. Some people that you want to spend more time with. Finally, let's talk about spiritual rest. It may be last in the list, but it certainly is not the least of what we need. Ask yourself, have you lost your sense of hope? Do you feel helpless, trapped, or defeated? Do you lack motivation for life and feel like it is a waste of energy? Do you feel far away from God, your still small voice, or the center of who you are? Write down some thoughts about this. Even if you don't feel this way now, have you ever had these sensations? Perhaps you can make note of what it was like when you felt helpless, trapped, had no motivation for anything. This final type of rest is one that we all need, this spiritual rest. According to Dr. Dalton Smith, it is the ability to connect beyond the physical and mental and feel a deep sense of belonging, love, acceptance, and purpose. To receive this, you want to engage in something greater than yourself and add prayer, meditation, or community involvement to your daily routine. Perhaps you can take one last moment for this most important spiritual rest to think of things that restore your spirit right now so that you can be sure to schedule them sometime. Schedule some time just for spiritual rest, some time to meditate. Commune with nature. Physical, mental, sensory, creative, emotional, social, and spiritual. We all need rest in these areas, but more than likely, you might be good at getting some of them and not so good at getting some others. So I task you today, on this first day of 2023, to figure out what one or two kinds of rest you are lacking, and consider how you're going to schedule in a time each day to get them. Resolve only to make small changes to your schedules and behavior patterns, knowing that with each small change you make, you're opening the door to a more restored and rejuvenated self, a self that is gaining clarity and wholeness, a self that is more centered and ready to be a force of good in this world. Whew. Now, after all that mental activity and sitting still for so long and being so nice and quiet, let's get up and stretch a little in my body or spirit, if you will. And I think there are gray hymnals on chairs. If you will turn to hymn number 352. I have no idea what the page number is.
352.
The hymn number is
The tune
352.
sounds something like this.
us affirm a culture of rest by establishing rhythms and patterns of rest in our own lives. Let us affirm one another when we take the rest we need in order to be our centered selves. Let us be leaders in this rest revolution, being the way we want the world to be, always. We've now come upon the moment when we can share our treasures with this community that sustains us and reminds us to take good care of ourselves and each other. When we each give what we can, we open ourselves to possibilities. The money that you're able to give helps to sustain this church, its programs like worship, Wednesday nights, and religious exploration for our children, our beautiful buildings and grounds, and the people that make it all happen. It is all possible only because we give in the ways that we can. Now, the ushers are already passing, but we want to be able to listen to some beautiful music, so they're fast. Our closing words today are The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. "Bend my life," each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. Let us now join in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Thank you. And remember, you are loved, you are blessed, and you are worthy. So go now and celebrate this new year with rest, rejuvenation, and a centeredness that just fills you with all the mirth and joy there is in the world. It's out there. You just have to take it in. Thank you all for being here today. believe there may be some refreshments in the social hall if we want to. There are refreshments in the social hall if you want to stay a moment, and converse.